Hi, it's Lauren. Thanks for tuning in for a Whimsy Stamps video. I have one more Thanksgiving card to share with you today. I was inspired recently by a crafty challenge to use Retiform art on my card. So I'm going to create three different backgrounds. Well, two different backgrounds. One of them is already created by using the Autumn Hues paper pack. And for my second background, I'm using my Chevron background rubber cling stamp, and I'm using some Pinecone VersaFine ink on that. I'm just doing kind of a reverse stamping where I'm putting the paper on top and applying pressure to the paper since it's such a large background stamp. So now I have two, and for my third background, I'm using these leaves from the Build a Pumpkin Patch die set, and I die cut them out of some orange and green cardstock, and I'm just going to layer them around my card in a pattern, trying not to put the same color next to each other too much. And here you can see I have so many leaves on this background. I think it looks really cool and it creates a fun pattern. And once I have all the leaves where I want them on this A2 white piece of cardstock, I'm going to grab some really wide repositional tape and apply that down to pick up all of those leaves so that way I can add glue to my leaves and I can place them back onto that white cardstock without having to rearrange them all again. So I've got glue on the back of those leaves. I'm going to grab that scrap paper again and place my cardstock piece on it, making sure it's the side without any blemishes. And then I'm going to apply those leaves down to the background. I'm going to make sure the glue is nice and adhered to the background, and then I'll slowly peel back off that masking tape. And now my leaves are attached without having to pick them all up individually and add glue. So once that glue is dry, I'm going to grab my large scissors and I'm just going to trim off all the excess pieces off of this A2 size cardstock. And that way I have a perfect third background. Now, as I was looking at these backgrounds, I know that they needed some splatter. I mean, everything needs splatter, right? So I'm going to go ahead and grab my splatter box and I'm going to get out my metallic watercolors. And I'm going to use kind of an orangey bronze colored watercolor to add splatter to my leaf background or my leaves background. And then for my chevron background, I'm going to use more of a yellow gold. So I have to apply more water and then I will get some really good splatter on this chevron background with yellow metallic gold color. So I'll set this to dry. Both backgrounds are drying while I start working on cutting my card base. So I have my card base ready to go. It's a top folding A2 size card base. And I also have a piece of brown cardstock that I'm just going to glue directly to the front of that card. So now that my card base is ready and my three backgrounds are dry, I'm going to show you how I cut each of these to create a fun retiform design on my card. So I'm going to start with my Autumn Hues paper pack, and I'm just kind of guesstimating, so I like to call it my guess estimation of about a third of a 4 1/4. There is, there is a such thing as a third of a 4 1/4, but I wasn't about to measure it and try to get it on my paper trimmer. So I'm just cutting 2 7/8 on each of those backgrounds. So now I have my column on the right, it's 2 7/8, and then I'm cutting my middle column to be 1.5 inches. Oh no, my left column to be 1.5 inches, and then my center is whatever is left over. So you'll see right here when I lay them all out, I've got my left, center, and right stacks of paper. And then I'm going to grab my large scissors and I'm just going to hold each stack of all three and cut them in just random diagonal cuts. So there's my left column. Here's my middle column. I'm just going to cut that in half at a diagonal. And then my right column, I'm going to replicate what I did on the left, but opposite for the right. So now I have all of these different cuts and they're all the same for all three backgrounds. And now I can mix and match my backgrounds and I can actually create 3 different cards. I'm only going to do 1 in this video, but I've saved all my scraps to be able to make 2 more. So I'm starting with my middle column and I'm trying to use my grid mat here to help me center my card base. And I'm going to take my Autumn Hues pattern paper and apply that to the center a little bit off the top of the card. And then the bottom part of my center column is my chevron background, and I'm leaving a little space in between all of these pieces just to have a little bit of a brown framed look around all of my background pieces. And now I'm going to go to the right. This time my top right will be the leaf background that I created. And then I'm going to pull out the chevron and do that one in the middle. And then on the bottom, I will use that Autumn Hues paper pack again. So again, leaving a little bit of space to kind of create a puzzle look with a border around each of my background images. So now the right column is done, I will go to the left and I'm going to kind of, again, mix it up. I don't want too much of the same background next to each other. I want to make it random and look more artistic. And so I have the leaf on the bottom, and then I'm going to do Autumn Hues in the middle, and then I will top it off with the chevron background on the right, or on the top. So now all of my background is done. I'm going to let it dry before I trim off the excess, but I absolutely love how this is coming together. The colors really complement each other, and it's really fun. So like I said before, I'm piling those up to save for later. I've stamped my little panda pumpkin here from the Pumpkin Spice Panda stamp set on some white cardstock, and I die cut it with one of my stitched circle dies. I've cut out the word thanks from the thanks word and shadow die, so I did the thanks word out of orange cardstock and one of the shadow dies out of some white and glued those together. I also have a quick strip that I die cut out of some green cardstock, and I'm using my mini alphabet set here, and I'm going to stamp out the word giving using that same Pinecone brown ink. So I'm going to stamp one letter at a time because I find that that's easiest for me to just line it up and stamp. So I'm doing G, I, B, I, N, and G to make the sentiment giving thanks for my Thanksgiving card. So now that my sentiment is done, I'm going to overlap them a little. So I'm going to add glue to where my thanks word will overlap onto the banner die cut. And then now I want to pop up my panda and my sentiment onto my card. So I'm just going to grab some foam adhesive and I'm going to apply some large pieces behind my panda circle. I'll peel off all of that release paper and I'm going to place that on the center top of my card so that way with my panda and sentiment it will look centered. I'm going to grab some foam squares to put behind my sentiment and then apply that just under the circle, overlapping it just a little. And I was going to show you my card, and then I realized, oh, I've got to trim off all of my excess paper, and I accidentally forgot to trim off the top, which you may notice here, but that's not a big deal. I trimmed it once I was done filming and taking pictures because I noticed it after. So here is my final card. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you try Retiform art on your cards yourself. You can use the links down below in the description to see everything that was used to make this card. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. We hope you'll click like and subscribe if you're new here. Also make sure to follow Whimsy Stamps on Pinterest, Instagram, and head to our Facebook group for even more inspiration. Thank you, and I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving.